Hi everyone, Suneel, Dhand, medical doctor. Welcome to another video. I'm going to share with you in this video yet another story of an experience a family member of mine had. I know I've been sharing a lot of these stories recently, and I do have a fairly large extended family beyond direct family, a lot of aunts, uncles, cousins, and more of them, following my recent videos, which many of them watch, are sharing their experiences with me. And it's always good to share these types of experiences because, of course, I get these stories directly. And of course, everything hits harder when it's a family member. And I always think to myself, if this is happening to my family as a doctor, imagine how many millions of other people out there are affected by similar problems. I'm going to share with you a worrying example of how blood pressure can be really overtreated. So this is a family member who's over 80 years old, in his early 80s. And he has been prescribed for a few years now, well over, I think, 15, 20 years, blood pressure medications. And the two blood pressure medications that he's been on are perindopril, which is an ACE inhibitor, and bisoprolol, which is a beta blocker. So he recently had just actually made breakfast, stepped out of the kitchen, and sat down on the chair and tilted his head back and said that he felt like he was about to black out, which of course is very concerning. So he looked a bit pale as well, and he was led over to the sofa. And fortunately, his other family member was trained in healthcare and checked his blood pressure while lying down. And his systolic blood pressure, listen to this is so concerning, was in the 70s, was in the mid 70s. So it should be over 120. Often when it's that low in the hospital, a rapid response is called. It's considered a medical emergency. So fortunately, beyond feeling a little bit faint, he didn't have any other symptoms. He didn't feel overtly dizzy. He just didn't feel good. So he was hydrated, which is a good thing to do. And his blood pressure was checked over the next half an hour or so and started to creep up a little bit as he drank more water, and he ate a bit as well. I was also given some salt. So that morning he had taken his perindopril and bisoprolol, and it was very obvious when you went back and listened to his stories over the last few weeks that he was often feeling lethargic and his blood pressure had clearly been low. So over the next week or two, his family member, who was trained in healthcare, helped him to taper down on his medications. He actually went to his local doctor practice as well, even pharmacist, and they confirmed a blood pressure which was on the low side, high 90s, low 100s systolic. So I've said this before in videos, there's certain medications you have to be careful of with abruptly stopping, and one of them is a beta blocker. So over the next couple of days, his blood pressure was monitored, his pulse was monitored, his pulse was slightly on the high side, his systolic blood pressure was in the hundreds. So his bisoprolol dose, the beta blocker, was cut in half, and he continued on that. For the next couple of weeks, he was having half a dose of bisoprolol, and maybe over time he can even come off that, but he had completely stopped the perindopril. And he had been on these medications for some time. And this is the learning point that I would like to impart on anybody out there, because I believe that this is a scandal of epic proportions. People get put on blood pressure medication, often in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they stay on these doses. And the only time their blood pressure is ever checked is when they go to their doctor's office, or in the UK, a GP surgery. And think about this. Blood pressure measured once at a doctor's office is not necessarily reflective of what blood pressure is at home. This is a huge problem. People's blood pressure is often higher. They're a little bit nervous when they're at the doctor's. They may have just walked to the doctor's, climbed stairs, whatever. So the most important thing to do, and I would advise this anybody over the age of 65 especially, keep close watch on your blood pressure. Blood pressure machines are really easy to get. It's so funny because I've actually made videos on this topic before. You can get blood pressure machines for $20, $30, 15, 20 pounds. If you're in the UK, you can get a really good blood pressure machine and measure blood pressure at home regularly. Now, if you're doing fine, feeling good, maybe you need to measure it less frequently. But I bet there are a ton of people out there in their 70s and 80s who are on these blood pressure medicines and they're running at a low blood pressure. And all it takes is something like getting sick, or maybe not being hydrated that particular morning, not eating breakfast, and your blood pressure could drop, often dangerously low. And that's exactly what happened in my relative. Blood pressure dropped to the 70s. And I think that morning when I got more of a history, maybe he didn't hydrate himself. He had just been for a long walk. But it was clear when his blood pressure was checked over the next few days that he was regularly running in the 100s, 110s systolic. So his blood pressure was already baseline low. And this is probably something that has been happening over many years. A lot of people's blood pressure starts to drop in their late 70s and 80s, and they're being inappropriately treated with a large number of blood pressure medicines. And we all know what the current ridiculous medical paradigm is, to throw pills at people, to be hyper aggressive with numbers. Same thing goes with cholesterol. And there aren't enough really thoughtful doctors out there, and the system makes this almost impossible, because when you're on a chronic medication, it needs to be monitored very carefully all the time. Ideally, I would say everybody above the age of 70 should see their doctor once a month, in my opinion. Now, a lot of people out there will say that's completely impossible, but I believe if we're talking about being on lots of medications, this is an absolute must if we're talking about avoiding any adverse effects down the line. But at the very least, because it may take a very long time for our system to get to that state, it may never get to that state. I have a suspicion it won't, because we don't have the right leadership, and the medical profession is entirely enamored by more and more medications. But at the very least, I would say this, focusing on this particular topic. If you're on blood pressure medications, please check your blood pressure at home. If you suspect that this is a problem for you, check it 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. You can even take your blood pressure machine with you when you go to your doctor's office and make sure that the two values correlate. Because I am absolutely certain there are tons of people out there who are running at low blood pressures, and they're at risk of having fainting episodes, falling, or even worse, a cardiac event. And the best thing you can do in a suboptimal system is take your health into your own hands and make sure that the medications you are being prescribed are appropriate. So I wanted to share that story with you. Thankfully, my relative was okay, and I was able to give further guidance. So that is the purpose of this video. To summarize, high blood pressure is a problem for which millions of people are on medications, and they stay on the same dosages for ages and ages. Measuring blood pressure once at the doctor's office is not enough. Measure it at home. Make sure your management is appropriate, and write all the numbers down. You can note them on your phone, write them in a diary, and don't accept second best for your health. Your health, your well-being is simply too important for you to entirely rely on the system to keep you well. Thanks everyone for watching. Dr. Suneel Dhand. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Have you or a loved one had a similar experience? Check the links in the description down below for my website and all the other work I do. My free newsletter, if you're not already signed up for that, please do so. Also, our natural supplement store, my uniquely formulated natural supplements. If you're in the USA or Canada, ohighwellness.com. If you're in the UK or Europe, ohighwellness.co. Take care, everyone. Stay strong, and we will speak again in the next video.